Also, for Thomas Finn, say that we have a sound effect for who's the big the big winner of the week, and I have say like his sound effect could be it's Phil like tooting the horn. And listen, you don't like it? Okay, so skip it, then don't.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece for the hit HBO television series Westworld. I'm one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene, the Stain Lyons.
I belong to another world. I always have.
And this is our fan email episode where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our feedback on the top listener emails for the week. This week's episode was entitled Vanishing Point. You spent an hour listening to our ideas on Tuesday's Deep Dive. Now it's our turn to hear from you. Guys, it's been a while since the three of us have been together. I feel like when the Beatles broke up and they went on that reunion tour.
I was expecting we were going to get a nasty email thinking that we kicked Gene out of the band.
I don't think anyone would care, honestly. They'd be like, sweet, you got rid of Gene.
YouTube would rejoice.
Anyway, that's... Listen, if you've never listened to the podcast before, we do 3 episodes per week. We do an Instacast, which we release on Sunday nights immediately after we watch the episode of Westworld. Then we go back into the studio and record a deep dive on Mondays, which we release on Tuesdays. And then we record Thursday. We take the best emails of the week, as well as our voicemails. We read and respond to them. We get so many, though, that we can't read all of them, and we can't read every single part of an email, but you can go to our website, shatontv.com, search for the Westworld Telegraph. There you'll find all the unedited emails on the website where you can respond to them. You can join the conversation. Again, that website is shatontv.com. Also, we're coming back with Shat the Movies, where we review 80s and 90s movies. You can check out all the information on that website, shatthemovies.com. That being said, Gene, you're back. We're glad to have you. What do we have in store tonight for the Telegraph?
It is a whopping 16 emails and quite a few more voicemails. They range on all sorts of topics. A lot of them have to do with Lost, so I'm excited to get into that. But again, you can tell that the show is winding into its finale. Thoughts are starting to solidify, and some really, really deep insights into consciousness and also the nature of the Man in Black. So these are some of my favorite emails of the season.
All right, well, Big D, why don't you go ahead and fire up that Telegraph and we'll get started. All right, our first Westworld Telegraph comes in from Rob P. Rob P. writes in, "Hey guys and gals, hoping all is well. I've been wondering to myself why Teddy's death just didn't have the wow factor that it should have for me. Even with Rachel Wood's performance, it was just kind of a meh moment. But I think I figured it out. They never really have the character of the importance to warrant that kind of feeling of loss. In season 1, Teddy was always second fiddle to young William. He was the Dudley Do-Right to Dolores' Nell. Meanwhile, William stole the girl, not to mention the screen time. Then in this season, Teddy was essentially just a crowbar they gave us so we could pry inside Dolores' head. At first, he was a stake in the ground. When we watched Dolores descend into host madness by gauging her distance from Teddy, then once she had Teddy altered, he wasn't a reliable yardstick any longer. He became disposable. So when he decided to dispose of himself, it really, to me, wasn't a surprise. He was just played out. Anyway, that's my thought for the week. Really looking forward to the season ender. Keep up the good work. And that comes from Rob P.
I think the problem more can be explained that in season 1, he had a lot of screen time and we loved him. Teddy was one of the main characters and Teddy just got shit on left and right. You can remember every episode, something bad happened to him. The Man in Black would unload on him. We saw him wake up in the body shop and the time that Dr. Ford he finally gave him the Wyatt narrative. Those times you felt for Teddy, But this season, it was almost not enough of him to remember why we love him.
I think he did play an important role, though, in showing the inner workings of Dolores. You said, Rob, you said that he was kind of a crowbar to get inside Dolores' head. That is an important role in and of itself. So to me, I felt for Dolores in that scene. And this is a character who all this season we've kind of looked at as, the Wyatt side, and how we were just like, people have said things like, oh, how could she be so cruel or ruthless or whatever. And I think it's showing that there's a vulnerability there. I thought it was a powerful scene, but yeah, it was predictable in the sense that I don't think anyone for a second thought he was actually going to shoot her.
Yeah, and if I can just stop any negative emails I'm going to get. When I say the Wyatt narrative, when Teddy was given the narrative to go hunt Wyatt down, not when he thought he was Wyatt, that's what I meant.
I like Terminator Teddy. I'm glad that they went there, and I'm glad he got to become a badass. So there you have it. Thanks, Rob, for writing in. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Mitchell P. Mitchell P. writes in, when finally confronting his daughter and accusing her to be Ford, William, arguably the second most prepared intellectual inside knowledge filled guy in all of Westworld next to Ford, can't bring himself to consider the fact that when she begins to spout off only details contained in his profile, that maybe, just maybe, she had found it and read it. It was given to him by Ford, his arch nemesis. He didn't destroy it. He knew it existed somewhere in the real world. He lost it, or so he thought, or he just had it hidden in a book in his master bedroom. Is that really where you would put your personal vision of the 18 missing minutes of Watergate tapes for eternity? I know he has become detached from reality, but for a character who is always a step or two ahead of everyone, this was a weak plot hole and just sloppy, in my opinion. I did not and will not believe that William's psychological disorder is so prevalent so as to override his well-known and respected logic and problem-solving skills. It had to or should have occurred to him that his daughter got her hands on his profile. This telegraph comes from Mitchell P. Guys, what do you think of this?
So I'm going back to my mantra that I've had essentially since episode 2 of this season, which is when something feels like sloppy writing in Westworld, other than technical stuff, it tends to actually be intentional. And so to me, I looked at this scene and it just doesn't add up, right? Like it's just something's fishy about it. And that should be a red flag to us that some part of this narrative isn't altogether real, or that it's being recollected differently by different people. So it's intentional, the fact that it doesn't add up. What it all means, we don't quite know yet.
Yeah, again, there's an issue with the sequence. The man in black gets it from Dr. Ford at the bar. Immediately, Juliet's drunk. She has to be taken home. They're together. They get home. Emily's there. He takes her upstairs, hides the card, comes downstairs. She kills herself. In between there, Juliet puts it into the music box. So the man in black never had time to actually view his own profile. He doesn't know what's on it. And then also, if my wife were to kill herself and the police would come, I imagine they're going to look in her desk drawer. They might find the music box. Most likely he's there. It would turn up. It doesn't make sense. I don't think it's a plot hole. I think it's telling us to pay attention to it.
So which one of us is going to clear your browser history cache when you die, Big D?
I think we have an opportunity for a good a company right there. It's a service that people need. Yeah, not to throw a wet blanket on this conversation, but in the military, you have to sometimes serve as a bereavement officer. So when a soldier dies, you have to go through and kind of look through their stuff, and you do find that stuff, and you're supposed to take it away so the family doesn't see it.
Okay.
So I'll be your bereavement officer, Roger.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's a good friend. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes from James G. He's talking about the scanning hat. He writes in, "Hi, Shatters. A lot of people seem to believe the crap about that hat. I say no way. Based on the look that Emily gave Man in Black when she put her hat back on, I took it as a dad joke. He was saying the truth, but indicating the hat at the same time to fuck with her. And at first, she just ripped off her hat, presumably because she didn't want to be scanned, but then put it back on when she understood that it's not actually a hat scanner and her dad is a hat scammer." This comes from James from Delaware. 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 I get it. Not Delaware, but Delos. Got it. Understood. He also attached a picture.
No. That's me. No.
This is you?
That's me. We actually got another email from from Greg. And Greg said, "Hey guys, I guess we missed the fact that the biggest tinfoil hat theory was actually the hat themselves. Keep up the good work, Greg from Chicagoland." So I went back and I took that. And I'm going to include it in the email that we post. It's from the premiere episode where Bernard and Charlotte are down in the first secret bunker, and Bernard sees the drone host, and they realize that they're swabbing for DNA. If you look directly behind them, there's it looks like an IKEA, like clear plastic organizer, where they have all of the Stetsons clearly stored, and they're matching the DNA sequencing from the hosts with the, I assume, the readings that were taken in those Stetsons. So it's not really a joke.
I also want to point out for Arsenal fans that if you look in this in that scene, the guy that they're swabbing for DNA is it's El Neni, actually, the midfielder from the Arsenal.
Look at the giant bush on that guy. Do you see that? Is that a guy?
I was going to say that is a merkin to die for there. That is one. You know what that is? That's like a Persian bush, Gene. I imagine that if you just were to let yourself go, that's what it might look like downstairs.
We are nature's DNA trap. So,
but you can't even see the baby bird eggs in the nest. It just looks like a nest.
That's right. It looks very comfortable, like a pillow. Just want to lay your head upon that. It's hard to believe that the Ottoman Empire ever fell. Thanks so much for writing in. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Stephen M. He's talking about Lost in Westworld. We reference Lost a lot in our deep dive. He writes in, "Hey guys, how do you ever expect to understand Westworld if you couldn't understand Lost? Lost didn't answer any of your questions? I challenge you to ask me 5 questions that were never answered, and I guarantee I can answer it. I tried to think of one question that wasn't answered last night while listening to your latest podcast, and I couldn't come up with one. You guys frustrate me so much, I couldn't even finish your last episode. Steven." Oh,
well, Steven, challenge accepted. Here you go, buddy. Question 1, Walt. He had some kind of special powers. He could project himself from various points in the island. He spoke backwards. He saw the future events. He had some crazy ass throwing knife skills. But nobody ever explained where these abilities came from. So that's number 1. Number 2, the childbirth problem. Women were unable to give birth without complications. Or even death for many years. And I do not want to hear your electromagnetic surge bullshit answer. I want a real answer. Number 3, the mother and the monster. So we know that Jacob and the man in black were raised by mother after she killed their real birth mother. She then gave the powers to both of them and handed her duties as the island caretaker to Jacob, showing him the magic light that must never go out. But what I want to know is, who was she actually? Where did she come from? Was she the monster before Man in Black? And why the monster was a giant black cloud and made mechanical noises? Okay, that's 3. Number 4, where did the island and all of the properties come from? I don't know. Number 5, who was the original inhabitants / creators, and who built the temple? Those are your 5 questions, and here's your bonus if you're feeling frisky. Why did Christian Shepherd appear to Jack and Michael off the island if the man in black couldn't leave?
I just really want to tune in to Steven's podcast, which is like about lost questions. Like this is a great troll in the sense that if he's looking to start one up, he got you, Big D. You just gave him a month's worth of material right there.
Hell yeah. I'm going to be his first guest.
Thanks, Steven, for writing in. We appreciate it. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Zach S. Zach S. writes in, "If William turns out to be a host hybrid, could this be the beginning of him breaking down and his mind rejects his new reality, as we've only seen him tracking since the beginning of the show, which I am proposing was less than a month of canonized time ago? Now, we don't know how old William Host Hybrid was at the start of season 1, but this madness over learning who he is and isn't a host that he's consumed by could be the way that William expresses reaching his cognitive plateau. As you guys have discussed, we really don't know how this process works, and it's entirely possible that a host hybrid that is never made aware of their transition to a new body might never notice, meaning they would never hit a cognitive plateau. So if that's true, it doesn't matter how old the William hybrid is at the start of season 1, as long as he's never had to question the nature of his reality. Now that he's being presented by Ford and Emily with reasons to doubt his humanity, he is finally starting to fall apart Daddy Delos style. Him shooting his daughter is his version of Daddy Delos's I feel as good as new, tickers beating like a ruh. And carving up his own arm is his version of Jim Delos carving his own face and coming to there is no God, just the devil's reflection realization. Now, if this is true, we can look into evidence that both characters express their cognitive plateaus through self-mutilation with the goal of self-dissection in order to gain information on the nature of their own reality, as well as a sense of autonomy over their situation. Humans spend their whole lives coming to terms with our body's mortality, and we learn to exercise control in our daily lives to build meaning that nullifies our sense of nihilism, accepting what we can and cannot control, and internalizing that as part of our worldview, allowing us to feel comfortable with what we then understand to be the nature of our own fates. Now, as a host human hybrid, or just even being unsure if you are one or not, would completely change this paradigm for you and makes complete sense that even as you try to embrace your newfound livelihood, you would still have the ideas that conflict with your own worldview on a deep subconscious level and would impact your behavior and eventually compound into completely abnormal behaviors once enough contracting ideals destabilize that internalized worldview. So, even if William is not a human hybrid, it seems like the show has been telling us that people don't go mad as host hybrids because of something wrong with this technology. They go mad because human consciousnesses are not malleable enough to undergo at least a perceived physical overhaul and stay sane. And this email again comes from Zach S.
First of all, bravo, Roger. Wow. That's probably your best block ever. I want you to start doing audiobooks. That was great.
I got to take 30-minute snaps before we start recording.
You did. That was dynamite. As far as the content, well thought out. And it's like we said on the deep dive in the Instacast. Yes, your explanation is completely plausible. Just as he is actually a man slowly going insane from a psychological condition. Both make exact logical sense. So not a hole in yours. Yours could very well likely be the case. I just hope it's not.
Yeah, what I really enjoyed about this was it really drew the parallel of we've just assumed that the inability to come to grips with the reality of what's going on in Westworld, we thought it was restricted strictly to the hybrids. And I think what we're showing here is that even a normal person exposed to this for long enough, consumed by this, and driven that deep into the questions of their own reality, the mind can't handle it. Again, it kind of speaks to the fact that guests are limited in the amount of time that they can stay in Westworld. You know, the overexposure to it will drive you insane. And it's fascinating to see the Man in Black as he starts off as William, exploring the world, then attacking the world and hacking the host to bits to trying to control the world. And then finally that becomes violence toward others and then violence toward himself. So it's almost like the maze, right? Starting from the outside and working your way in until the point where you're literally tearing yourself apart with a knife.
I still think he's human. I don't think he's a host.
Agreed.
Me too.
Our next email comes in from Eugene B. Eugene writes in about the timelines. He says, hello, that data chip that shows the history of William in the park has a scene in season 1 where the Man in Black drags Dolores into the barn. How can that be on the profile card if the suicide happened a year before the event? Also, why do you say the hosts are woke instead of awake? With warm regards, Eugene Brown.
Okay, so I'll handle the first bit with the scenes we see in the chip. Unfortunately, you have to believe that William's been going there for 30 years. He has a hit list that he's done. So we're led to believe that he's done that multiple times because he references in the conversation with Teddy, when Teddy comes to defend Dolores, he says, Teddy, you're the loser. You can never win. And they have that whole confrontation, insinuating they've been in this situation before where the Man in Black is going to drag Dolores off. And we can see there's a scene also where we had an email right in saying the scene where William, the old William, hands Dolores the milk can. And he said, how can that be? That was right before the Man in Black went and scalped Kissy. And you can see in the background, Kissy's there out in the Sweetwater Street. In the actual scalping sequence, Kissy was still dealing cards and closing up shop. So they look very similar, but they are different.
I can handle the woke part. So woke is in common vernacular. It's like the red pill in the Matrix, right? It's being aware of what's really going on around you. So it's not not just awake as in aware of like reality, but woke as in like having a complete understanding of something that other people are blind to. It's a very specific term.
Yeah, and I think it's common vernacular amongst most Westworld podcasters and most fans of the show is if they're off their narratives and they're able to make their own decisions for themselves, that's a woke host. I don't know. It's part of the Urban Dictionary. It's slang, man. We're being cool. We're hip. We're with it.
So, Rod, do you want a sound effect whenever we say woke? We'd be like, hey, Rod, you woke?
Westworld.
Time. Yeah, I'm with you, Eugene. I cringe every time I hear it.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Bruno in. Bruno in writes in, my theory. Man in Black's wife found his profile card and by checking on it, found out that he was a host. That shocked her and raised the doubt in her that maybe she was a host too. So she cut her arm to make sure that there was no port under her skin. I mean, come on. What else in that profile was such a shock to her to cause her to kill herself? So maybe she didn't intend to kill herself after all. And maybe Men in Black spends the whole episode holding his arm at the same point. So I thought this was a major clue. And again, this email comes in from Bruno in.
All right, Bruno. So I was with you at the beginning. I was like, she watches the video, which, by the way, it doesn't seem that advanced, right? It seems like watching on a tablet is kind of a disservice to technology. I thought it would be much more immersive, or anyway. But so she watches it and she gets very upset. And it does seem odd that if you just saw somebody you knew who went to a park and did, 15 seconds of horrible things, you would go, well, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do at Westworld. I don't think it would be that big a deal. I mean, remember, we know that she went there and partied. We also know that Logan went there and partied even harder. So it seems really odd that she'd be. So I was like, yeah, maybe she did see that he was a host and that's what freaked her out. But then I thought deeper on that and I was like, A, why would that cause her to think she was a host? And B, if the man that you despise, the man that is ruining your life, the man that has torn your family apart, you find out that he's actually a host version of your husband that you fell in love with, A, you're relieved because it's not really him. And B, you just say, fuck, there's a host in my house, and you call the cops or something.
But also, I think it's the emotional betrayal that if she lost her husband, and who she thought was faithful, he was a good guy, he was upstanding, he was renowned for his philanthropy, and then you see a screen of all the violence, and that he loved essentially a sex doll over you, that he would choose to go to a park and bang robots than you, that would fuck with your head, I think.
But she already knew that. That's why she's so emotionally torn.
No, but she doesn't know. She thinks, Logan told stories, but it's different to see him banging out a robot. That's gotta fuck your head.
Was there a banging on a robot scene? Did I miss that?
You don't think that was in the montage? It has to be.
Hold on. It definitely is probably in the montage. I don't think they showed it. But my issue is, I don't think she slit her wrists. She took pills. In fact, you see the empty pill bottle.
Right. And also, if I'm going to slit my wrist to look for port, I'm not going to, before that, draw a nice warm bath and lay in it and bleed out. If they found her at the medicine cabinet with like towels wrapped around her wrist, then I'll go with you.
Yeah.
But until then, I got to say, sorry, Bruno.
Yeah. I can't get on board with you, Bruno. I love that fact that you wrote in here, but I don't think that she thought that she was a host, and that's why she killed herself in terms of looking for it. But it was a great email. Thanks for writing in. You made the podcast.
Valeu.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Greg S. Greg writes in, as someone who followed Lost and currently watching Westworld.
Oh no,
here it comes. I see a lot of parallels between both shows. On top of the storytelling and characters, the main story also seems familiar. Now remove all the mysteries and side quests, and the story is actually quite simple. It's two godlike beings on an island. One wants to protect and the other wants to destroy and escape. They also both accidentally created each other and can't directly fight between themselves. So to complete their objectives, they need to find perfect human analogs. If you replace the island with the park, apparently also on an island, Jacob and the smoke monster with Ford and Arnold, Locke and Jack with Dolores and Maeve, we pretty much have the same story. Heck, there's even a William and Delos exploiting the park in the same way the Dharma Initiative was doing on the island. Are you seeing and thinking the same, or am I in tinfoil territory? This comes from Greg S.
I mean, there's a striking similarity. I just want to point out that Greg is not nearly as folksy as Raj reads. He just threw in a heck there as he sucked on his Werther's original and rocked in his chair. But no, but I mean, you make a really good case here. I see it.
Yeah. I mean, Dharma Initiative and Delos, I mean, that's something that we picked up on in season 1. And in fact, there's even the symbols of the Delos Initiative and the Dharma Initiative look alike. And when we saw Daddy Delos in that little bubble room, it looked eerily similar to what we saw in Lost. There was a lot of stuff there, which is why we constantly compare this show to Lost. Listen, J.J. Abrams, Bad Robot, also produces this. There's striking similarities. If you don't believe it, then you're completely blind, or you never actually watched Lost. What would be, you know what we're going to start doing? I'm going to start comparing the show to The Wire. I've never even watched The Wire, but I understand it's about drugs and Baltimore, and I'm just going to start making my own analogies.
If this show was done in the vein of The Wire, it would be 100 times better. Like they would spend one season. I mean, an entire season of it would just be Bernard like putting Dolores together, or Arnold putting Dolores together. That would be an entire season.
Yeah, I actually hear that The Wire is an amazing show. So one of these days, I'm going to watch it. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Amy. She's talking about Dolores' scene after Teddy kills himself. She writes in, you mentioned during the deep dive that the sound that they played in the background during this moment was interesting, and that it might even signal that Dolores is having a psychotic break of her own, signaling character change to come. I noticed it too, and it resonated with me, but for a very different reason. If you have ever watched someone you love get hurt, or you get very bad news about them, meaning someone died or has a scary diagnosis, you have heard that sound before. That is the panic or grief sound where all of the noise and sound in the world fades away, time slows down, and the only thing that you can hear is the sound of your heart pounding in your ears. It makes a womp, 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 womp sound like that. I thought it was a beautiful, accurate, and very well done artistic representation of the phenomenon as someone who has heard the panic grief sound before. It's probably not a psychotic break, just a normal reaction to witnessing a tragedy. And again, this comes from Amy.
So there's a lot of truth to this, Amy. I've been in that situation before, and as soon as that scene happened and the sound and even the way they captured the video on it, I knew exactly that feeling. It was very evocative. Is one of the things that the show does really well is it can place you into a feeling in a world that is completely, foreign to us. Love that. And this idea of the psychotic break, actually, I'm fascinated by it because we don't see what happens to Dolores after this scene. And if we are to believe that, wokeness or that sentience is triggered by extreme pain or extreme suffering, could we see here after this episode a completely different Dolores? Like maybe this is the moment that she needed, and maybe it was intended all along.
Yeah, I think it's a very truly human response. And that's why it was so surprising for Dolores to have it. Remember going back when Maeve, when her daughter was killed in front of her, Maeve is screaming, but the audio's dropped out. So that was the key trigger to having her become aware and become awake. So maybe this is Dolores's moment, because the two scenes look very similar. But yeah, hopefully I never hear that sound, that womp, 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 womp. That's not one that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Thanks so much for writing in, Amy. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Jacko Lynn. She writes in, I just wanted to let you know that I have next to me one of your biggest four-legged fan who fell asleep enjoying your most recent Westworld podcast. My dog Lucy is a rescue that was saved 3 days before after her previous owners, who, no joke, threw her and her mother over the wall of the shelter. Needless to say, she has a few issues being around strangers and gets a little fearful around guys. However, when I listen to your podcast, she will come right up to me and settle down next to me as I listen. This would make you the only guys she runs towards when she hears your voices. LOL. So there you have it. And she posted photos of herself with her dogs. Guys, as dog owners, Gene is a rescue dog owner and volunteers as well at the local shelter here in Phoenix. This really warms my heart.
Absolutely. My dog, who, as you mentioned, is a rescue, when I was first getting to know her for the first few times that I visited her at the shelter while I was volunteering, the way we met was that I was reading to her. So there's a program at the Arizona Animal Welfare League called the Rough Draft Book Club.
Oh, I get it.
Where you go and you just read to these dogs. A lot of them, they're just not, they need to learn to trust the human voice and the human presence, and reading to them is a great way to do it. So it makes sense that droll, droning sound that we make for an hour or for 3 hours a week is music to a dog's ears.
Well, I think Dolores could weaponize our podcast, because we've had many emails state that we put them to sleep, put people to sleep. If we can put animals to sleep, there's something special about our voices.
Yeah. Oh, I just love these photos. Hey, let us know. Yeah, let us know, Jacqueline, if we can post these photos, because the one of the dog sleeping next to the podcast being played on the laptop is quite precious, and I'm sure my dogs Albie and Pippa would love to see that on their respective Instagram profiles.
Good night, Lucy. Good night.
Good night, girl.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Joseph R. He's written in his nominations for the Father's Day Father of the Year. The first one, Man in Black and Emily. He says, I believe shooting or killing your daughter is an automatic disqualification.
Agreed.
Ford Maeve. Ford does call her his favorite. He quotes, "It isn't easy to contemplate letting your children die. You were as close as I got to having one. You stayed here in this world to save your child. So have I." So Ford does think of her as his daughter. He seems to have great pride in what she has achieved, and he gave her encouragement to continue on. So Ford is in the running. The next Father's Day Father of the Year nomination is Arnold Bernard Charlie. He says, "We know less of this relationship than most of the rest, but from what we've seen, Arnold Bernard seems to have real feelings for Charlie. Definitely in the running." And the last one that he nominates is Peter Abernathy with Dolores. He says Peter does show love for his daughter, and in spite of what she has become, the death bringer, he raised her to be a good woman. He is also a show favorite and thus likely the winner. Are there any other nominations, or who would you choose, Joe?
So, Joe, I don't think anybody could argue with Peter Abernathy. I mean, he even lets his daughter cut his head open, and that's real love. But I do think that one I would add to the list is Lawrence. Lawrence seems to really care for his kid and puts his life on the line for her. So, and she's a great daughter, by the way. She's matured much past her years.
Oh, I got an easy one. I'm going for the father of that young boy who goes up to Dolores in season 1 while she's painting. It's a family, and the kid who says, "You're one of them, aren't you? You're not real." That father. Yeah, seriously, it's $40,000 a day, right, at Westworld? Was that what we decided the cost was?
That's right.
I question when people take like their 5 or 6-year-old to the Super Bowl. I'm like, fuck, okay. Yeah, it's great that your kid went to the Super Bowl, but is it really the best use of a ticket?
Yeah, I mean, but also, Dad of the Year was like, he really wanted to go to the Westworld, and then his wife was like, "You're doing what?" And she's like, "Well, we're all going then." And he's like, I guess we're going to go watch a host paint by the river.
That would be my experience with Megan. I'd be like, "I'm going to go to Westworld with the boys. We're all going." She'd be like, "No, you're not. You're not going without me." And then I get to see you guys like run off in your black hats on, adventures to Pariah, and I'm stuck down by the fucking Mesa in the river with Dolores drinking condensed milk.
No, Megan would definitely take the prospector up on his offer to go up to the river and start panning for gold.
She's like, "Let's go on an adventure."
Are there arts and crafts in Westworld?
No, let's be honest. Yeah, you and Megan would actually be upstairs in the Mariposa, passed out with vomit all over your room by like 7 p.m.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Ari. It's about, he's asking, why is Teddy in the water? He says, "Hey guys, I swear to God, if that is his body carried there by a flood, I just won't know how to feel. The ultimate tinfoil theory has fresh legs again." This is for those who don't know the Teddy flood theory. Who wants to give them a refresher?
I think you're the only one fit to do it, Raj. This is your baby.
Okay, so the Teddy flood theory supposes that at some point, just like in biblical times, God sent down a massive flood to cleanse the area of all its sins, and Teddy was a representation of that. That's why he was named by Dr. Ford Teddy Flood, that he was going to be the harbinger of this great big cleansing of Westworld and wipe away all the vices of the land. And lo and behold, we do see that that there is a flood in episode 1 of season 2, and who is in there? It's none other than Teddy Flood. So, it could be, but like, I don't, if I thought that this theory was going to come true, then it would have to have been Teddy that set in motion to do that. And I thought that maybe it was going to happen because he was his brain, his little what do we call it? The MCU, the little ball. Yeah, the little control unit was going to be swapped into another Bernard unit, and he was going to set forth the flood, but that didn't happen. I just think Teddy's floating in this flood, so I don't know if the ultimate tinfoil theory has any legs. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think it'd be poetic if it was actually a flood of Dolores' tears that washed him into the...
Oh, jeez.
Oh, you're so bad. No, here's I'm going to agree with you here, Ari. There's no other debris in the water. Teddy, where we see him left, he's inside that dilapidated like shed. You would expect there'd be boards, other things floating if the flood picked him up. And then also I went back today after I read your email to watch the ending of episode 1. You can't see it really close up, but it does not appear that there's a bullet wound on the right side of Teddy's temple as he's floating in the water. So this could very well be a duplicate Teddy or a spare Teddy or a fixed up Teddy. Who knows?
A spare Teddy. We all need spare Teddys in our lives.
I've got a closet full of them.
Sexy. Thanks so much for writing in, Ari. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Randy. It's entitled How to Lose Your Viewers in 5 Easy Steps. Number 1, sell your show on sex and titillation and then radically change that in the second season. Before the show even started, we heard about the contracts that required full frontal nudity and genital contact. This created buzz about the show, and then in the first season, we had plenty to talk about, from well-endowed cowboys to the orgy scene. The second season is almost entirely devoid of nudity. Number 2, have main characters' quests succeed only because of mass incompetence. On the response team with their keystone cop level of competence, disdain for air power, and lack of basic pattern recognition, Dolores only succeeds in invading the Mesa and destroying the cradle because she faces a beginner mode level of resistance. This kind of reliance on the opposition not being good at their job just takes you out of the story. Number 3, throw in new characters for emotional beats when we have no investment in them. We see the Man in Black's wife for only 1 episode and are supposed to become invested in her plight. Oh, poor woman who is forced to live a life of wealth and privilege. How awful her husband must be, whom to all appearances in the real world is a philanthropist and treats her with care and respect, even covering for her when she is making a fool of herself. Oh, he has a dark side and acts like an ass at the park. Well, the only option must be suicide, not say divorce or just leaving him. We don't understand her decision because we don't know her and therefore don't fucking care. Number 4, give characters powers and then only use them when the script requires. Dolores can resurrect her followers, but often does not. Maeve can control other hosts, but sometimes doesn't at all when it wouldn't be helpful. This is too much like The Walking Dead, where sometimes zombies are slow and at other times they are fast, depending on what the writers think will create tension. And finally, number 5, add in plenty of James Bond last-minute escapes. Whether it's Hale's last-minute stays of execution or Man in Black's killing the response team just as they are scanning Emily, these last-minute escapes are just lazy writing to create artificial tension. Even if Man in Black was going to kill the response team, why not wait till they scan Emily? These are just cheap tricks to create mystery. I went back and listened to the first season of the podcast, and it was like we were on a journey together. The second season, though, you have had to spend more and more time defending the show. Even good shows will have critics, but I think it's fair to say that the loss of viewers is in some cases because of self-inflicted wounds. And this poetic takedown was from Randy Lee. Guys, what do you think?
Well, first off, when I got this email, I started reading and I saw the subject line. I was like, oh, fuck, this guy's going to tear us apart. I thought he meant us losing listeners.
That's right.
But thank God it was for the show. So I'll address one of them, the nudity. Yes, nudity has almost been removed from the show this season, but you can understand it from a plot perspective. In season 1, you had hosts who were being repaired naked, all in the body shop. Most of the hosts were clean, disposed of, and worked on nude. There was some sex scenes because that was the park in full operation. Where today would you see somebody naked other than Lee being forced to strip? Where would nudity be naturally present in the state of Westworld today?
I got one for you. When Maeve is on the operating table and her arm and neck are all cut up, but they put a gown on her for why?
I don't think she had a gown on. I thought she was just dressed like she was, and they just kind of cut the sleeves off.
I got another one. That whole seduction scene of the little guy. Why didn't she just take off her clothes right there and seduce?
Yeah, that would have made sense.
That would have made sense. I mean, certainly more than just looking into his eyes and then he's mesmerized by her.
Maybe that time that Dolores and Teddy had sex and all we got to see was James Marsden's butt.
Actually, that actually did it for me.
His back looked ripped. It looked good.
Yeah, it looked good.
He looked shaved. Did somebody shave the host, or is he just naturally hairless?
Westworld. Nudity doesn't make the show. I feel like I do feel like it was a little cheap attempt in season 1 to get people interested in the show, because if you just said it's a show about robots and a theme park that goes awry, people would have made too many comparisons to that of Jurassic World and maybe not have worked, may have not have tuned in. You know, it's the same argument that Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has matured, right? And I think that's what's happening here at Westworld. Even though, I mean, come on, the first few seasons of Game of Thrones, there's nudity all the time.
Yeah, that's because a lot of them were unknown. Emily Clark would have signed any contract to get on that show. After 3 seasons, you can see that she went to her agent and wanted the nudity reduced. It was intentional. You can make people do anything. You can, have them sign a contract for genital to genital contact. After they're a well-known commodity, it's a little harder to do that.
Actually, it's Amelia Clark.
Oh, Jesus. What would you expect from me?
What other, what about his other points outside of the nudity? Does that, any of these ring true?
I mean, I think all of them to a degree ring true. It's all stuff that we've essentially mentioned, but I think that he does, Randy does a great job rounding it all up. And these are valid complaints. But again, it's, is it a perfect show? No. Is it succeeding in what it's trying to do? I think yes, but he's absolutely right. When there are disgruntled casual viewers, these are the reasons.
At the end of the day, it's entertainment. It's solid entertainment and it's enjoyable. But Randy, listen, you make great points and I appreciate you writing in. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Adrian. Adrian writes in with some questions from the last episode. He says, hey guys, love your show. A few questions about the latest episode of Westworld. At William's party, when he says to Ford, the deal, Delos stays out of your stories, you stay out of away from the valley. Ford replies, you, meaning Delos, broke it. So what exactly did Delos do to break the deal? That's question number 1. Big D.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. It's unintentional that William and the Delos project have affected Ford and his narratives. You got to remember that what the Delos project needs is for the host to serve as constants, and it allows that the guest will have interactions that will vary, but they need the host to always be consistent, and that dictated that their loops change very little. So over the time of the park, Ford has his hands tied on changing narratives, on adding new attractions, on making the park what he would like, to have a variety and make the hosts more real and have a variety of experiences. So I think that's what he means, that the project is restraining his part of the deal from being and coming to what he would like it to be.
I like that explanation, Big D. The only issue I have with it, and it could be spot on, but if there is any sort of counter argument to that, it's that it's in Ford's best interest to have loops, because that's, again, how the hosts are kind of circling toward consciousness. And also, when he's explaining that inside the cradle, it doesn't seem like he's entirely upset about it. And some people have written in and said that there's almost this unnatural opposition between William and Dr. Ford, and that we see that there's a tension there. We see that they're driving against each other, that Ford is playing games with them, but at the same time, it seems like Ford is trying to nurture him in a certain way. And I think that they haven't given us enough structure to understand what the relationship is between these two guys.
There's also one other quick possibility. William looks surprised at Ford's accusation. So maybe there's something going on, with the project, Delos, someone else at the company, that broke the agreement that Ford, just alerted William to. So William looks a bit surprised.
Is it just me, or does Ed Harris look surprised a lot in this episode? Like, he seems to be looking around in bewilderment a lot.
He's had a rough day.
Definitely. His second question, comparing his love for Maeve with her and her daughter, Ford says to Maeve, "You stayed for your child, as did I." This would imply that Ford had a choice, stay for Maeve or leave. How would Ford leave the park? Also, if Ford just stayed to upgrade Maeve, then these new powers she must be an important part of his plan. Otherwise, he would be somewhere else, either using his knowledge and skills to guide his story, or less likely, sitting on a beach somewhere sipping a cocktail.
He could have just left, like literally. They said, "Hey, we're retiring you." He could have said, "Okay, bye." But he stuck around. But I think also what he means in this sense is that he is there right now, right? He's speaking to her in the immediate relatable sense, like, I am here for you. This is not where your story ends.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just that he stayed for her. I think he's also staying because he wants, I think he views the park as his baby. It's not just Maeve. Maeve was his favorite, but the park, I think, is his baby.
I had a thought today, and it doesn't relate directly to this, but it does the situation where Bernard is able to, through the glass, make contact with Maeve through the mesh network. Bernard is walking right by as they weaponize Clementine. Wasn't there a little bit of a risk there that Bernard could have caught up in that he could have been one of the first hosts affected?
Well, in Dungeons and Dragons, often magical attacks are done in like a 15-foot cone.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Burning Hands is a good example. And so it could have been just that they have directional beaming there, and she was just pointed in the right direction.
So the hands act as antennas.
Yeah.
It's a couple.
Little antennas. Man, they're getting a lot of use out of Clem, by the way. Yeah.
Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Ted. Ted writes in, "Hey guys, I believe I have deciphered your secret. You guys are hosts. Here's my tinfoil reasoning. Shat actually stands for secretly hosts always talking. Number 2, various members of your group go missing for days, supposedly to Europe or Mexico, but more likely are returning to the cradle for updates. Number 3, Roger stumbled all over the word verisimilitude on the recent Telegraph, pretending to not know what it meant. Too close to home, host Roger? And the big reveal, your email address is hosts@shatontv.com. Your secret is safe with me, and this comes from reprogrammed Teddy in Canada, eh?"
I think we universally agree that this is one of the most brilliant emails we've gotten for the Telegraph. And this is actually more solid than, I'd say, a good third of the theories that we do get. So hats off, Teddy. Brain scanning hats off to you.
Yeah, this is my favorite email of all time. Even it has replaced the Teddy Flood theory. Our next Westworld Telegraph comes in from Shane. Shane writes in, "I apologize for the stream of consciousness, but it's late and I've had some scotch, but there's something in the way that Felix says hosts experience memories perfectly while humans don't. Humans improvise memories whether they recall them, while hosts recall memories and improvise based on them. They have true introspection and the ability to analyze the world around them and decide how they ought to be. Meanwhile, William remembers Emily hating the elephants, but that's wrong. Or maybe Emily is wrong. But the point is, humans disagree about particular memories because we don't actually recall them. It isn't about what is right or that Emily or William is a host, but rather it is about how humans are slaves to their own subjective cognition, while hosts are slaves only to themselves because of their objective perspective on who they are and who they can be and who they can't be. Teddy doesn't jump through mental hoops to make himself the good guy. He lucidly realizes he's the bad guy and kills himself, something William can't do even after murdering his own daughter. Hosts remember perfectly, and so they don't argue about what happened in the past, but rather they disagree on what to do based on their knowledge of these memories, which is why Maeve and Dolores have different paths, which is why hosts also have true free will while humans do not. It's why humans can't be hosts, because our code doesn't allow for perfect recall and true introspective decision making. This one comes from Shane.
Bravo. Well written. I don't think I have anything to add to that. I think it's spot on.
Well, there is research that shows that there's a part of the brain that when we take an action that is bad or incorrect, that immediately starts making up a story as to why it's okay. It basically justifies that part and rationalizes what we did wrong. So humans are inherently fallible in that sense, and it's a really brilliant observation that a host wouldn't be. The host has a true record of what happened, whereas the human has their version of what happened. And I love that distinction that he makes. That he basically says that humans improvise the memory itself, like we make up the memory, whereas the host improvises based on a perfect memory. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and they've recently found that there are some people who have what they call it's like a super memory or total recall. The actress from Taxi, Mary Lou Henner, had it, where they have they don't remember they can't remember every single fact that they've ever read or just have totally perfect recall. But what they can do is they can tell you from their perspective every interaction, every moment of their life. So they can ask her, and they asked her in a 60 Minutes interview, they said, what were you wearing on this date? And she could tell them, I was wearing this shirt, this dress, I just come from this place. And that memory is tied to the emotion that they felt. And she tells the story of her family making her move when she was young. And as she's recalling the story, her mind is there. She can feel it. She has perfect recall of her emotional connection to that moment. And all of them, and I forget, it's a handful of people in the world they've identified who have this. Almost all of them have one thing in common. They have a difficulty in building relationships or keeping relationships because the perfect recall doesn't allow for the flexibility that you need to compensate with a situation. Imagine if your spouse got into an argument with you and she could recall every wrong thing you've done perfectly. You would never win. You can't make that connection. So the imperfect nature of our memory is what makes us human, and it makes us able to go day by day. So I think the email is spot on.
I just want to clear up something for our young viewers. Taxi was a television show in the 70s that only Big D remembers. And the television was something that you used to actually watch what I guess you kids would think of as YouTube videos and Netflix on. So yeah, so that was and it used to come in over, get this, antennas and the airwaves. And there were only 5 channels that you could watch, and one of them was Taxi.
Okay, I'm not the only one. We got an email that was referencing the dream sequence in Dallas, that they were wondering if the episode next one's going to start off with somebody in the shower. So I'm not the only one who remembers these old TV shows.
Our final Westworld Telegraph comes in. It's an actually Telegraph. It comes from Carl Dunkenberg. He says, "Hey guys, actually, I know that the show ended a decade ago, and I know that this is a fabulous podcast about a fabulous show that is not lost, but the angels of my better nature have lost out, and I can't help but ask Raj, did you watch Lost? John Locke died and never came back, and the island was just an island. Electromagnetic anomaly nonsense withstanding. God, I already hate myself for writing this. Actually, oh well, keep up the good work, boys. P.S. No need to read this on the pod if you don't. Oh, okay, never mind. All right. Well, we read it, Carl. I'm pretty sure John Locke did come back from the dead and did escape the island and then died when he was off the island. And that's why, and they all convene back. If memory serves me right, it's been a long time since I've watched Lost, but didn't they all convene back at his funeral?
No, crazy ass Jack with the beard. When he was in LA, he went to the funeral home, opened it up, and we have a picture of him in the casket. But then later on, he does go back to the island, and he's there with the man in black and Jacob.
On the perfectly normal island.
Yeah, perfectly normal island.
So Locke definitely survived and came back to life multiple times.
Well, at least once. I wouldn't go multiple.
At least once, right? Am I just improvising that memory? I do remember John Locke coming back multiple times.
God, if there was only a way that we had a record of this show so we can watch it and check.
If only there was some way that we could go back and watch Taxi. All right, now's the part of the podcast where we listen to our voicemails.
So this week we got a bunch of good voicemails, and we got one from Megan from California, and she sounded like she was on fire. It was going to be a good one. It was a hot take, and then her phone cut out at 12 seconds. So Megan, you might want to call back. But the first one that we took that was a good one and had a good take was Jacob.
Hey, leaving this voicemail for the Westworld podcast. This is Jacob from Baltimore, and I'm rewatching. Well, first of all, I love the podcast. You guys are great. I'm rewatching season 1, and I've noticed that you see this wolf 3 times. I think it's just 3 times in the whole show. Once when Dolores starts her journey, once when Teddy seems to start his journey in the finale of season 1, and then again when the man in black wakes up at the beginning of season 2 after he rolls out from under the bodies. That, and then the fact that the man in black's hat is in the season 2 intro has got me, I can't reconcile with it. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not 100% convinced he's a host. I don't even think I like it, but those few things are just getting at me. I don't know what to think. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you.
So the part of this voicemail that I want to address is the wolf. The other correlation with the wolf is that location and time is also shown to us through Akicheta's. Did I get that right? Akicheta.
Akicheta.
So we also see Akicheta in that. Thank you.
Nice.
In that same location, whether it was coming upon the massacre at Escalante or in Sweetwater. So there could be a chance that the wolf is a visual representation of Aki without showing his actual body, but maybe his wolf spirit form.
Yeah, and also people have also hypothesized that when Akicheta is looking at the man in black is the vulture. They're pointing to this as evidence that both of them are hosts and are programmed in the doesn't look like anything to me to view the others as a wolf and a vulture. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good theory. It's not proven yet, but it would at least explain why we see those two animals.
The next one we got, the caller didn't leave his name, but he wants to discuss Logan and whether he'd really want to return to Westworld.
Hey guys, just responding to your season 2, episode 9, Vanishing Point of Westworld episode. And the whole thing why one of you guys is saying subject 001 would be Logan, and I don't think so, because we're assuming that Logan went back to the park after William strapped him on the horse naked and rode him off and he went mad. Because after that is when William came back in with James Delos and said, let's start this immortality project. That's when it started. So I don't know. I really don't expect Logan to want to come back after that experience. It was really traumatizing for him, and I feel like he just wouldn't go back. So I don't think he's 001. I'm probably leaning towards the James Delos just because he was the first person that they actually tested with the making the host body. So that's where I'm leaning. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so here's my question, Raj. We go to Vegas.
Yep.
We're partying. Shit goes wrong. I tie you up onto a horse. You ride off naked into the desert. You wake up next day, sunburned, hysterical. Do you go back to Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the best weekend ever.
Is it logical that Logan would go back, or did this event cause him to start doing drugs since he couldn't get that rush in the park?
Yeah, I think that I think you're right. I don't think that Logan went back to the park because of this experience, because he lost his place. It's expertly pointed out here that the time frames just don't make sense for Logan to be 001, because the events of the creation of the cradle or the forge, the creation of that project seems to at least have occurred after William took the mantle of Delos, and so it would make sense to me that Daddy Delos agreed to be the first subject to maintain his immortality while Logan was off getting high all the time. So while I do believe that the park has captured some of Logan's consciousness and maybe is storing it in the Forge, I don't believe that they were trying to make multiple Logans.
Next one we have comes from Chris from Minnesota.
Hi guys, this is Chris from Minnesota again. Just realized something within the TV show for Westworld. We know that in that bar scene between Ford and the Man in Black, they make a comment about how they had an agreement that their two respective worlds weren't going to cross with Delos' project and with Ford's park. And then Ford said that the Man in Black's people broke that promise. And William generally looks kind of confused, as he doesn't understand what Ford's talking about. And I couldn't help but wonder that maybe, we've seen in past episodes with the past director of the park, Teresa, when she was trying to use one of the hosts to upload information, if that information was some of the Immortality Project, which I think we all know pretty much was. And if that's the case, that Ford was aware of it, and maybe there's something bigger going on, because we're kind of led to believe that William was in charge of the Immortality Project, but I'm starting to think that maybe he's not, and that there's a bigger goal for the Immortality Project that William's not aware of, that Ford uncovered, and that's actually why he released his host. Because what Ford sees is the creation of a new people of existing humans becoming essentially immortal, and he's essentially lined up his host to counteract that or somehow run interference. I think this parallels really well with these dual sides Ford and the Man in Black have constantly been at odds at. And I wonder if this whole game that Ford has set for the Man in Black is maybe not a discovery necessarily about the Man in Black himself, but maybe a discovery about how his project has gone beyond his control, and that he'll eventually have to work with Ford in some capacity to ring it in or fight against it. So love to hear your thoughts. Keep up the great work. Thanks.
I like the idea. It kind of goes into what I was saying before. William's reaction to Ford's accusation is surprise. Charlotte Hale has been dealing with somebody about getting information in and out of the park. There's something going on that is probably larger and bigger than William. So it would explain it. If the end reveal is William's pet project turned into something much worse than he could have ever imagined. So I think it's possible.
And some people have written in and mentioned that the way they refer to it in that scene, whatever the project is, as an it, and giving it a sense of agency, that they even believe that it could be something that has a consciousness or a sentience of its own. So like basically, again, going to either an AI or some sort of an organizational entity. I don't think that the Man in Black is necessarily the big bad, nor does he seem that in lockstep with Delos. It seems like he is in a very divergent path with Delos.
All right, thanks, Chris. Next one is from Jonathan Schultz.
Hey, this is Jonathan Schultz from Austin, Texas. Love what you guys are doing. Thanks very much. Keep it up. This is for Westworld. A couple of times, the subject keeps coming up about how the nonlinear timeline is disruptive or gimmicky, and some people are pissed about it and some people like it. And I've heard you guys, I think maybe especially Big D a few times, have said, well, the only reason that they could have chosen this is that there's something about the story, or that it enhances the story in some way. And so this is maybe kind of an actually, because that's incorrect. If you look at aesthetic theory, there's really two ways of knowing. There's knowledge in the first function and knowledge in the second function. Knowledge in the first function is story, it's intellect, it's literally the facts and the details of what we know. But knowledge in the second function comes from feeling. It comes from the feelings and the way that the information is conveyed to us as a work of art. And so I just wanted to say you guys might consider the fact that that this was an aesthetic, artistic choice that was not meant to drive the story at all, but meant to drive the viewer's feelings about the story. And the more I get into this, I mean, listen, I keep up with stories like this really, really well. I've never had to listen to podcasts or things, and I do to keep up with this one. I think that's part of it. It's to make it confusing. It's to make you anxious. It's to make it seem mysterious, and it gives the whole thing this sense of unknowability that if the story were to have been told linearly, we wouldn't get. It wouldn't seem that complicated. If someone were to go through and splice all this back together in order, you would watch it and go, okay, that was cool. But you wouldn't go, oh my gosh, shit, I got to listen to this podcast to figure out what's going on. That's one of the reasons. It's the VR worlds. It's all of those devices that they're using. These are devices that are purely for aesthetic purposes to drive feelings into the viewers. That's my take on the non-linear storytelling. Thanks so much.
Going back and thinking about the main time jumps that we have revolve around Bernard and his confusion when he's going through and he's having issues, where it's indexing or addressing his memories. So maybe the storytelling wasn't just to keep the mystery, but it was to let us as a viewer share in his confusion and feel that uneasiness, not knowing what we were seeing. I like that take on it. It would explain a lot of the stylistic choices in a way that would make sense more than just hiding or obscuring facts.
A big part of this show is the mystery. A big part of the show is unraveling and connecting with other individuals to get at what the end game is ultimately going to be. And I think that's what makes the show fun. So while, admittedly, it probably is a little gimmicky, that's why I tune into this show. I love it.
I'd still point out, though, that Kikusuya was a breath of fresh air with fairly linear storytelling that was straightforward. I go, oh, this is a nice story, as opposed to, what the fuck? Okay. Especially, please don't mix up time frames during action sequences. It's maddening.
So the next one comes from, I don't know how to describe him. Driver Bob was our cold open for the deep dive. And he called back because Roger and I thought in our season finale predictions that we should put in there that Driver Bob might murder one of us. But Driver Bob decided to call in and reassure us. But his voicemail doesn't really leave me feeling warm and fuzzy.
Hello, gentlemen. Driver Bob. I just want you to know nothing will ever happen to you. That I have use for you. Vio con Dios.
The Vio con Dios. That's the one that gets me. I'm confused. I'm frightened. I'm intrigued. Driver Bob, please send us a picture, please. Next one comes from a frequent caller, Tom W.
Tom W. again. You probably won't put both together, but I forgot one major part of my point. Wouldn't it make sense if you're a major corporation or you needed funding for this project and you knew you could attack somebody like Delos, that you would put a mole in early on with the family? But that's why maybe they knew exactly how to get Logan on board when they had the party. William was just starting dating Delos' daughter right before they had this. So I think it's really interesting how that could have been played, and the whole time they were attacking all sides of the family to see who could get Jim Delos to turn and fund the park.
Okay, so remember, season 1 we've seen before Delos makes the big investment, Logan's been there multiple times. It would make sense that if they wanted to get the family to invest much more, you would do everything you could to leverage the park's assets. And at that point, they're still observing the guests. So they're watching Logan, they're listening, and it possibly could be. It's far-fetched, and I wouldn't want to see it. But if the park was smart and they wanted to get funding from this specific family, trying to put a plant inside the family would be a good way to do it. Is it likely? Would I want to see it? No, but it could be. The last one is going to be Adam from Austin.
Hey, y'all. This is Adam from Austin. I have been listening now for 2 days, and I've taken on a great endeavor to complete all of your stuff just because all of my job is pretty much where I can just listen all day to music, and oddly, your podcast showed up. So nonetheless, want to get to my Westward comment. What makes the Man in Black so bad? What makes him so evil in the real world? He's a philanthropist. He's done really well. He's given. I'm sure, just like most corporate America, he has undercut a lot of people. But he, in the mindset, just like all we are when we play GTA, we're, running over bystanders. We're shooting at the police or even killing the police. In other games and other shooters, we're killing people. Granted, again, there's a whole nother level. I know that I'm making this more simple than it is. But in their world, in the Westworld world, it's okay. So really, my question to y'all is, what makes him so bad? And is he really inherently bad because he takes advantage of what he would assume are just robots that he can kill, and it doesn't matter. They just regenerate anyway. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Bye, guys.
So, Gene, this goes back to what you said. If you're going to Westworld, your spouse pretty much has an idea of what you're doing. I'd say probably 80% of the guests who are going there are acting in a similar fashion. Do you think he's that different from a typical Westworld guest?
It's like if you had a partner who you thought secretly, was a different person deep down inside, right? Maybe sexually, right? Okay, like let's relate it this way. You have somebody, you're with them, they're very what's the word I'm looking for? Reserved in bed, but you get a sense that like deep down inside there's something just dirty about them, but they never share that with you. And then you're shown evidence of they go to this other world and they're this entirely different person and they're absolutely sexually depraved. And I think that that's the issue. It's not necessarily that he's a bad guy, but it's that it's this unknowable, completely unrecognizable person. And it makes you wonder, like, how could they be so duplicitous? As he says, that stain, he realizes that it's actually just him shedding his skin. And then underneath, that is what he really is. I think that's the part that's the disconnect. But I agree that the degree to which Juliet is horrified and her breakdown, let's not forget that it seems like the Deloses in general are not that stable, right? I mean, you see James, you see Logan, you see Juliet. This is not an okay family.
How do you guys like to play Grand Theft Auto?
Oh, like a dick.
You go around murdering people?
Carjacking people? Yes.
Do you?
Of course.
I like to do all the little side quests, and I don't like to damage my car.
Yeah, I'm model citizen in every video game that I play. I just try to.
All right, come on.
I swear. I try like minimum casualties, minimum collateral damage. I don't even like games where you have to bash stuff to loot, like crates and stuff. I feel terrible.
Oh, please. I've played Battlefront with Roger. He just lays and hides. He's not out there as a medic patching people up.
No, because I don't like dying in battle. And you know what I'm really good at, though, is The Division. I'm awesome at The Division.
He is real good at The Division.
The next part of the podcast is our thanks and our shout outs. Gene, what are we doing for thanks and shout outs?
So the thanks are just our way of saying thank you for helping out the podcast financially. We know that not everybody can, so we also have the shout outs, which is our way of saying thank you for coming to the website, shatontv.com, visiting us. If you go to shatontv.com, you can help us out financially, or you can just get a shout out. Put your name in the shout out box and we'll read it out. This week's shout outs come from Mariel Chantal, Donkey Balls, Jimmy the One, Natasha, Katie, Irvin, Jason, and Daniel. And then we have a few thank yous to give for financial contributions to the podcast, which we appreciate deeply.
Our thanks go out to Thomas Finn, Michael Lahane, Nikki Goldner, Emily Jasper, who's a repeat financial contributor to the podcast. Thank you, Emily. Deborah Schneider, Stephen Vincena, Carmelita Valtez McCoy, also a repeat contributor, and finally Jeannie Yang. Thank you, everyone who contributed to the podcast. It really helps. Again, you don't have to do it. You can, shop on our Amazon affiliate link and Amazon will pay us, or you can just give us a 5-star review on iTunes and share with a friend. That equally helps out the growth of the podcast. Thank you so much for that.
Yep. And the one thing that's nice is Westworld, our busiest time of the year, and the contributions that people make now can help us go through the dry times for the rest of the year. So thank you very much.
If you didn't hear your letter or your voicemail on the podcast, remember all of them are posted online at shatontv.com, where we respond to all your emails and guests can comment and interact. So make sure you do that. There have been so many fantastic emails. I just want to say this is the penultimate Telegraph. We do have, another week of doing Westworld. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's listened, either who came with us from season 1 or found us as a result of one of our other podcasts. I do want to thank you so much for making us part of your daily routine. And also I want to give a shout out, my personal shout outs rather, to my co-host Big D, Gene Lyons and Carrie Gross. It's been really enjoyable this season to break it down, and I've just really had a good time with you guys, and I appreciate you picking up the slack and allowing us, me to take vacation. And it's not easy what we do here. There's a lot of time dedicated here. So I last year we it got rough and there were some low points, but I think this year was really good. And I think it's because, of your patience and understanding and just being awesome dudes. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Raj. I would remind you that we still have probably like 8 episodes of the podcast to go when we do the season wrap up, guest spots. We got to do our special edition of just all the mean mail that we got that we've been saving up. We are by no means in the home stretch, buddy. So hang on.
So Raj, are you having some kind of like an adult moment? You seem to be like reminiscing quite a bit. Is there something you want to tell us?
I'm improvising my own memories.
Or I think you need to take a 30-minute nap before we record every time.
I do. That's right. Well, as we are getting ready for the finale, we are going to do something different, which we haven't done yet this season, which have our own, I guess, what is it? A hashtag. We're going to have our own Twitter hashtag for Q&A. So if you want to send in your questions for us to answer on the Instacast of the Westworld finale, just hashtag your tweet with WW Shat. Again, hashtag WW Shat. Direct it at us on Twitter, and we will do our best to answer your questions for the finale on our Instacast. Again, WW Shat. Hashtag WW Shat. That concludes this week's episode of Westworld Telegraph. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow at Shat on TV. Our Facebook is Shat on TV Podcast. Just search for that. Our website, shatontv.com. Email hosts at shatontv.com. Our phone number, 914-719-SHAT, 914-719-SHAT. Be sure to subscribe everywhere you get your fine podcasts, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Again, sharing is caring. Be sure to do that. That really helps the podcast grow. Finally, if you like what we're doing here at Shat on TV, check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we review 80s and 90s movies from our childhood that you, the audience, vote for. Check out all the information at shatthemovies.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Gene the Stain Lyons, and Carrie Gross, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us on Sunday for the season 2 finale Instacast. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Good night. And we'll see you at the Mesa Bar. Take care. Good night.